Good evening and welcome to the November 30th, 2021 Chatham Select Board meeting. This is a virtual participation only. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please let me know. Pursuant to Governor Baker's June 16, 2021 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20, until April 1st, 2022. This meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted both in person and via remote. Is being conducted via remote for public participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while it is in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and the conference ID is 134-208-476#. Or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, but we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. And again, welcome everyone. I please remind everyone to please mute your mics and turn off your cameras until it's your time on the agenda. And let me start first with a roll call. Board Member Shireen Davis.
Present.
Board Member Corey Metters.
Present.
Board Member Dean Nicastro.
Present.
And Board Member Jeff Dykins.
Present.
And the Chair, Peter Kasolis, is present. Let me just go over just briefly what we're going to be doing tonight. The first thing up is our public announcements and agenda item request. Then we'll go into new business, first of which is the coronavirus update. Then we'll go into a public hearing on the Chatham Wayside Inn. We'll then have public comments on the following agenda item. If you're interested in the Monomoy Regional School District agenda, which is under our business agenda, you can speak at that time. Otherwise, the rest of the agenda includes a special day alcohol permits. There's 3 of them, one for Chatham Walkers, one for Fisherman's Daughter, and one for Roden Smith Art Studio. We'll then have a seasonal shellfish area openings. Tough tonight. There's 5 of those. And then we'll consider renewals on annual alcoholic beverages licenses. Then we have the agenda item on proposed changes to the Monomoy Regional School District. And again, public comments will be accepted or welcome during this period of time. And we finally end up with committee appointments on the Railroad Museum and the Climate Action, Energy and Climate Action Committee. So first up is our public announcement and agenda item request. I'll start with the board. Corey.
Thank you, Peter. A little bit overdue. It's been a while, so I just like to take a moment and read off the list of openings for the various boards, committees, and commissions that we have. So currently, Airport Commission, 1. Aunt Lydia's Cove Committee, 2. Board of Health, 1 alternate. Cape Cod National Seashore Advisory Committee, 1. Committee for the Disabled, 1 associate. Conservation Commission, 1 regular, 1 associate. Cultural Council, 1. Human Services Advisory Committee, 1. Independence Day Parade Committee, 2. Local State Building Code Board of Appeals, 4. North Beach Advisory Committee, 5. Open Space Committee, 1 alternate. Public Ceremonies Committee, 3. Railroad Museum Group, 1. Summer Residence Advisory Committee, 1 associate. Traffic Safety Committee, 1 alternate. Wastewater Intermunicipal Agreement, IMA Advisory Board, 1. Water and Sewer Advisory Committee, 1. Full members serve 3-year terms. Associates and alternates serve a 1-year term. Non-resident taxpayers are eligible to serve on advisory committees, the Cultural Council, and the Council on Aging Board of Directors. Only those registered to vote in Chatham are eligible to serve on regulatory and statutory boards and commissions. All interested parties are encouraged to apply to the office of the town manager or by completing a talent bank form found on the town's website. So we have multiple openings. So if anyone's looking for New Year's resolution shortly, we've got a spot to put you in. So please consider serving. There's a variety of openings out there. So, and just want to make, because we had a couple new ones. The 2 recent ones were the Airport Commission and Conservation Commission. So, you know, if you know of anyone out there who's looking to serve and has thought about it in the past, here's the time to give them a little bit of a nudge. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Corey. Anyone else on the board? Anyone else in the public? You can use the raise your hand function or speak out. And I don't see anyone. Okay, let's move ahead with our new business. And up first, there's our coronavirus update. And Judith Giorgio, I see you're here. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Just a quick update tonight. So our total number of cases is now at 446. As you can probably imagine, it's been a very busy month. We've had total of 40 cases in the month of November. 26 of those are vaccinated. 14 were not vaccinated or maybe status unknown. Just a note that I checked the Massachusetts DPH website, and they're saying that the only about 1.5% of the total cases in Massachusetts are in unvaccinated, are in vaccinated people. So that's kind of interesting. I think our numbers are higher. I'm not sure why, perhaps because we do have such a large number of vaccinated people in town, which is a good thing. So our incidence rate has gone up from, it's at 23.3. It was at 18.4 last week. Our positivity rate has also gone up. It's at 5.37, which last week was at 4.51. Barnstable County's positivity rate is 5.45, and its incidence rate is 30.5. So we're about in the middle on the Cape. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest for those numbers. We are continuing our plans to give booster shots to our homebound. We're working on setting that up right now. And also we're working on a clinic for our elementary school for our 5 to 11-year-olds. Both of those are in the works. The other thing in the news, which I'm sure you're all hearing a lot about in the last few days, is the Omicron variant. It's definitely a concern, but currently there's no reported cases in the United States, but I think this will probably change pretty quickly. This variant has more mutations than the Delta. They're not really sure. They think it may be slightly more contagious and maybe slightly resistant to our current vaccines. However, DPH basically is saying at this point that we have more questions than answers. So that's just something we're going to keep an eye on as we move forward. I guess the important thing to remember, and I urge everyone out there in the public, is to get vaccinated and get your boosters. Right now, I think the boosters, if you have your 2 vaccines already, is probably the best thing you can do to protect yourself. Also, we recommend masking up if indoors or in crowded outdoor areas. Continue to practice social distance, continue to do your normal hygiene, hand washing, covering your coughs and sneezes, disinfections, and monitor your health. If you're not sick, if you feel sick, stay home. If you have fever, shortness of breath, or cough, just stay home. Also, with the holidays coming, it's always a good idea to get a test, do a home kit. You can get them at all the pharmacies before you go to a family gathering, especially if there's children that can't get vaccinated there. So that's just something to keep in mind. They're fairly affordable. They run about $23 for 2 kits, for 2 tests. So that's what I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Hi, we have any questions? Thank you, Judith. Any questions from the board? Anything from the public? I don't see anyone. I guess that's it. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you.
All right, next up is a public hearing on change of stock interest for Chatham Wayside Inn. And Corey, clerk, would you please read the notice?
Absolutely. Town of Chatham, public hearing notice. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 30th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. in the large meeting room at the Town Hall Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, which is now being done by virtual participation, to consider an application for change of stock interest to the annual all alcoholic beverage license for 512 Main Street Incorporated, DBA The Wayside Inn, 512 Main Street. All interested parties are encouraged to attend or participate through the link in the posted select board meeting agenda. Signed, members of the select board.
Thank you, Corey. I see Mr. Oppenheim and Mr. Coughlin are both here. Welcome, David and Shane. Who's up? David or Shane?
I think Shauna will, we've talked to Shauna about this. Is really housekeeping. This is, I think the actual ownership has not changed over the years. It's 512 Main Street Inc. The stockholders have changed. If you look back at the records, back in '93, one member of our group was there for when we acquired it and gone in September of '93. As unfortunately my former partner Grant Wilson passed away in 2012, and I bought out his interest from his estate in January of 2013. Shane became a stockholder in, I believe, maybe 2016. I'm not exactly positive. He's been with us, and he's been the manager on the liquor license for over 20 years. And so in talking with Shauna, this is really housekeeping to get everything. I don't think we really realized we were supposed to necessarily talk about, since the ownership itself didn't change, the members, the ownership. I've always owned at least 50% of the company. And unfortunately, the major change was the passing of my former partner. So that's about it. I can answer any questions, but I think Shauna can, as she said to us, this is pretty much housekeeping and getting everything lined up.
Okay, thank you, David. Anything from the board? Any questions? I don't have any. Shireen.
I don't have any questions. I just, if this is it looked like it's a matter of an administrative issue. So I'd like to make a motion to, I guess, approve the change in the annual all alcohol beverage restaurant license for Chatham Wayside Inn, doing business as 512 Main Street Inc.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Being none, let's take a vote. Shireen.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Thank you very much, Dave and Shane.
Thank you. Have a good night.
May your whole meeting be this easy.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next up is public comments on the business agenda. And if you want to speak on Monomoy Regional School District, you can do it at the time, or you can speak now. Do I have anyone in the public who'd like to speak? I'm looking at my nothing on Teams. Anyone on the phone? Okay, let's continue on. Next up on the agenda is, hang on with me for a second. We're looking at applications for one-day special liquor licenses, and we have 3 of them. The first one up is the Chatham Walkers, and this is really technically we don't have to do this, but since it's on public property, we're covering all the bases. I don't know if Shauna, if you want to say anything. I see Mr. Nickerson is on, but he doesn't need to say anything unless you prefer to.
Sure. Mr. Chair, this is Shauna. This is an annual event that the Chatham Walkers hold at the community center. And while it is not technically open to the public, there's no fee charged. It's not advertised in any way. And those are the 3 keys for for obtaining a special one-day license, because it is in a public building, it is accessible to the public. So we just like to make sure that it's covered in that way.
Thank you, Sean. I see Dean has a question.
I was going to offer a motion unless the applicant wishes to speak first. Looks like no one's going to speak. I move to grant a special one-day liquor license to Mary Ellen Lurifis. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. On behalf of the Chatham Walkers for Tuesday, December 7th, 2021, from 4:00 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at the Chatham Community Center, and to further grant permission to possess/consume alcohol on town property as associated with this permit.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, hey, Dean, I don't know if it's you or whether there's a shuffling of papers, and it might have been on there, but there's nothing now, so we're okay. Any comments? If none, let's take a vote. Since I'll start with Dean.
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
and Shereen,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. Thank you very much. Next is a special one-day liquor license for the Fisherman's Daughter, Taylor Brown. I don't see anyone.
Again, Mr. Chair, this is fairly
Okay.
standard for the Christmas stroll. Downtown merchants like to be able to offer their shoppers a little beverage while they shop.
Okay, thank you. Questions or a motion? Shereen,
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the special one-day alcohol permit for wine and malt beverages only for Taylor Brown as a representative of Fisherman's Daughter for services at 521 Main Street on Friday, December 10th, 2021, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
okay,
Second.
second. All right, let's have a vote unless there's any discussion. Seeing none. Corey,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
Shereen,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. And the final one is consider request special day one permit for Odin Smith on behalf of Odin Smith Studio and Gallery. For Odin you may make a comment, or we'll turn it over. I see you are on if you'd like to make a comment. Otherwise, I'll go to Shauna.
Again, Mr. Chair, it was for the
Okay.
Christmas stroll, and I think it's kind of nice to see someone who's not downtown on Main Street participating. Just kind of
Yeah.
spread the cheer.
Good point. Okay, Shereen, I see your hand up.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve special one-day alcohol permit for wine and malt beverages only for Odin Smith as a representative of Odin Smith Studio and Gallery for service at 895 Main Street on Saturday, December 11th, 2021, from 4 to 7 p.m.
And the second.
Second.
Okay, second. Let's take a vote. Jeff,
Aye. I lost my connectivity for a second, so if I might be a little thready here, I'm at work. Second.
Okay.
I mean, aye. I say aye.
thank you. Shereen,
Aye.
Corey,
Aye.
Dean,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. Thank you. Next up is a seasonal shellfish area openings. We have 5 of them. And is Renee with us? If not, I guess Rachel.
Renee is not. I'm standing in. So good evening, Select Board. I'm seeking approval for the opening of the seasonal closures shellfish areas, Mill Creek, Taylor's Pond, Champlain Creek, Oyster Pond, Bucks Creek, as of tomorrow, December 1st.
Thank you, Rachel. Any comments or questions from the board? I see Shereen has her hand up.
I do? I do? Okay. Well, I guess
Make a motion.
we'll make a motion. I recommend that the board, I move to approve the opening of Mill Creek, Taylor's Pond, Champlain Creek, and Oyster Pond and Bucks Creek on December, what is it? December 1st, 2021.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Second.
And the clerk have to read these? Yeah, you want to read them now and then we'll take the vote?
All right, bear with me here.
Okay,
Shellfish Rules and Regulations, November 30th, 2021. Open, effective December 1st, 2021. The waters and flats of Taylor's Pond, north of a line drawn across the mouth of the pond, are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Shellfish rules and regulations, November 30th, 2021. Open, effective December 1st, 2021. The oyster pond east of a line from Kelly Landing to Long Point is open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Effective December 1st, 2021, the water and flats of Mill Creek, north of a line drawn from the western breakwater to the eastern breakwater at the mouth of Mill Creek and south of a line drawn across the mouth of Taylor's Pond, are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. Effective December 1st, 2021, the waters, flats, and all tributaries of Champlain Creek, northwest of a line drawn from the outermost piling at the town boat ramp, northeasterly of the quote, no shellfishing, quote unquote sign in the marsh on the opposite shore, are open for the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. And finally, effective December 1st, 2021, the waters and flats of Bucks Creek, north of a line across the mouth of the creek and east of a line across the mouth of Cockle Cove Creek, are open to the taking of shellfish by permit holders until further notice. All these notices are signed by the select board.
Thanks, Corey. Any comments from the board? Seeing none, let's take a vote. I'll start with Dean.
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
And Shereen?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, board.
Okay, next our annual liquor license renewals. And we have a whole bunch of those. There's only one change that I'm familiar with. And that is all alcohol in resident restaurants and mills. JTA MM Corporation doing business as Talkative Fred has provided their license. Shauna, anything else?
No, happy to report that all of our annual license holders did return all the appropriate paperwork and fees to renew their licenses for the 2022 season.
Great, that's good. Thank you. We have a motion. Dean, I'm sorry, hands up.
I was going to offer a motion. I just wanted to ask Shauna, we typically read all the names, don't we?
We have in the past. I also can insert them in the minutes.
I'm happy to read them. I'll offer a motion that we approve the following annual liquor license renewals presented by the licensing agent. All alcohol package stores, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 15. Eric Payon Sr. doing business as Chatham Light Liquors, Chatham Liquor Locker, Quick Pick, and Inc. doing business as Chatham Liquor Locker. New Chatham Corp. doing business as Chatham Liquor Store. Dash Inc. doing business as Shop Ahoy Liquors. Deftos Liquor Store Inc. doing business as South Chatham Liquors. Wine and malt only package stores, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 15. Chatham Cheese Company, LLC, Chatham Village Market, Inc. All alcohol restaurants and inns, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 12. 512 Main Street, doing business as Chatham Wayside Inn. Bluefin Sushi and Sake Bar. Branches Grill and Cafe. Chatham Bars Inn, east of Shore Road. Chatham Bars Inn, west of Shore Road. Chatham Orpheum Theater. Inn Partners, LLC, doing business as Inn at 359 Main Street. JJG Chatham Inc. doing business as Delmar Bar and Bistro. Red Boy Inc. doing business as the Red Nun. One Drop Operating doing business as the Chatham Squire. Sign of the Surf Inc. doing business as the Impudent Oyster. Scorpios Enterprises Inc. doing business as Knott's Landing Bar and Grill. Wine and malt only restaurants and inns, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 12. Backpack Forever LLC doing business as Mom and Pops. Captain's House Operating LLC doing business as Captain's House Inn. Chatham Filling Station LLC doing business as Chatham Filling Station. Hangar B LLC. South Chatham Seafood LLC, doing business as Chatham Fish and Lobster. All Alcohol Club, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 12. Chatham Dramatic Guild, Inc. Isn't it Chatham Drama Guild? Whatever. Eastward Ho Country Club. All Alcoholic Veterans Club, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 12. Brown James Buck Memorial Association, Inc. And then there are no, everyone else is, I forgot to mention, JTAM Corp., doing business as The Talkative Pig. That's under the category of all alcohol restaurants and inns, Mass General Laws, Chapter 138, Section 12.
Great, thanks, Dean. May I have a second? Second, Corey, I think I said, I
Second,
saw your lips move. All right, thank you. Dean, you have a question, or is that just from before?
I'm taking
okay.
it down now.
Yeah, let's take a vote then. Doreen?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Corey?
Aye.
Dean?
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Thank you very much, Shauna. This is great this year. Usually we have a bunch of them left over. Okay, next is proposed changes to the Monomoy Regional School District and our superintendent, Scott Carpenter. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Peter. And tonight I have Michael McMillan here with us too. Michael can share a slide deck that we presented at our school committee meeting a few weeks ago, and shared the same information with the board in Harwich, and went to meet with them prior to the Thanksgiving recess. And we're here tonight with you to sort of share share what is in the recommended revisions. So our school committee voted back in August 11th to move forward the red line version that we have sent to both select boards. That still. Oh, we can see it, Michael.
Okay, perfect.
That language also needs to get ultimately vetted and approved by the Department of Education as well. Michael and I were on earlier today with the school's attorney, and we're in the process of setting up a meeting with the Department of Education, but we have been getting feedback from them and had made adjustments to it in what is the current red line version that the school committee approved. So Michael, why don't you jump to the next slide? So, one of the things we just want to do is just sort of emphasize sort of why are we, recommending that we adjust the regional agreement. The first thing is there is a lot of language that's in the regional agreement that is obsolete. In fact, the regional agreement as it currently sits doesn't even mention the word Monomoy, because at the time it was a regional agreement that was discussing the towns moving forward into a merger. So there's a lot of language about how the merger will take place, but that's already happened. So there's a whole bunch of obsolete language that needs to get removed, ideally, from the agreement. There's also a fiscal challenge with the agreement that I've raised, and I really believe that this was a completely unintended situation. But the way the agreement is written, when we have two elementary schools of such drastically different sizes in them, it actually ends up being that Harwich ends up subsidizing a significant amount of the costs of Chatham Elementary School. And what I have proposed is that it would actually be more fiscally equitable for the two towns if the two towns were just paying for the costs, the operational costs of their own elementary schools, that it would provide it would provide for more fiscal equity between between Harwich and Chatham, and how the regional agreement impacts the two towns. Next slide, Michael. So just the fiscal piece in a nutshell is all about economies of scale, and simply put, basic economics. If you have a large school or a large business, and you're trying to produce something, the larger it is, you have economies of scale. When it comes down to a smaller building, and at the moment, Chatham Elementary School is roughly about 150 kids, whereas Harwich Elementary is about 450 kids. It costs more. We can't educate the children at Harwich Elementary at the same cost that we can at Chatham, we can't educate the kids at Chatham Elementary for the same cost at Harwich Elementary. But the regional agreement is blind to that and just says, okay, all of the costs to run the district, Harwich, would pay its share based on enrollment. Chatham would pay its share based on enrollment, which ends up having Harwich, footing a big piece of that bill to run the much smaller Chatham Elementary School. So next slide, Mike. So just to understand the fiscal inequity as it currently stands, in FY22, the current fiscal year, Harwich Elementary School's budget is just over $6 million. There are 492 students attending the school. Its per pupil or per student cost at Harwich Elementary is $12,336 per child to educate them. Chatham Elementary is a little under $3 million, it's 2.7. 145 children attend the school, and the total cost per child to educate at Chatham Elementary is just over $19,000. So in this situation, we're seeing that it costs almost $7,000 more to educate a child at Chatham Elementary. And it's not that we're doing something different or more. We're trying to provide the same educational program and the same educational opportunities in both buildings. It's just one building is just much smaller. And you have those fixed costs in running that school that are spread out between a smaller group of kids. And the way the regional agreement currently is written, it has Chatham paying for just about 25% of those costs based on enrollment, and Harwich 75%. So the way, at the end of the day, it all comes down to the assessments when it comes to the two towns. So if you take the combined elementary school budgets as it sits in the regional agreement, we have our total elementary school budgets are at $8.8 million. And you take the 3-year rolling average of foundation enrollment, Harwich is roughly 3/4 of it, Chatham roughly 1/4. Harwich is currently paying in its assessment $6.6 million towards those elementary budgets, and Chatham is paying 2.2 million. And if you just look at the bottom line numbers versus the top line, if Harwich simply paid for its own elementary school, they would pay $6,069,000 to run their elementary school, as opposed to $6.6 million. And Chatham, on the other hand, would be, instead of paying 2.2 million, would end up paying close to 2.8 million if we were to have each town pay for their own elementary school. So at the end of the day, what the recommendation is that it would be more equitable to have each town pay for its own elementary school, which, given FY22 numbers, is about a $600,000 shift in assessment from Harwich to Chatham. But it ends up providing that equity that I think is important. Next slide. So why this is important? what we have to keep in mind is that we want to make sure that we have the same solid, great educational program at both elementary schools. And neither the school committee nor me as the superintendent want to be in a situation where we're saying, okay, to be fair to the taxpayers, let's go and equalize spending at per pupil spending at 2 elementary schools. We can't do that and make sure that Chatham has the same that same program. So we want to make sure that that we sustain the same level of services and quality education that's happening at Chatham Elementary School, just like we want to make sure that that's happening in Harwich. We also know that that if we were to see this fiscal shift, it ends up being more equitable to the Harwich taxpayers. On the Chatham side, the win there for Chatham is we have to keep in mind that at some point, Harwich has been fiscally stressed, and and my worry is that at some point, if Harwich can't afford a budget that we're moving forward, we're going to be in a situation where that impacts everybody in the district, because at the end of the day, our budget ends up being based on which town can if both towns can afford it, then we're able we can have that budget. But if Harwich says, okay, we can't afford that $500,000 more, that ends up getting spread out and impacts both all children, because we have to end up reducing services across schools. So in the recommended revisions, there are 3 places in the regional agreement where there is some tweaking of the language that involves something that ultimately changes the assessment. The first one is how school choice revenue is handled in calculating the assessment. The second is how the operating assessments are calculated in the agreement, and the last is how capital costs are assessed to each town. So in terms of the school choice piece of this, currently in the regional agreement, there's no language for how school choice revenue is applied towards the budget. We take the school choice revenue that comes into the district, and we have every year use that to offset a piece of the salary line in the budget before the budget's even put together. Because we have a situation where we're having in the proposal to have the towns pay for their own elementary schools, we want to make sure that each town is getting their share of the revenue that comes in for school choice. So at the moment, school choice revenues are coming in anytime a child from outside of Chatham and Harwich chooses to come to school here at Monomoy Regional, and we have a free seat in which to say yes to accept that child. So we get $5,000 each for those children to fill seats that would be otherwise empty in the district. And as many know, we see the bulk of the movement coming into Monomoy from adjacent towns. So we'll see kids from Orleans and from Brewster and from Dennis, and then further out from Yarmouth primarily. But because of geography, Chatham is wrapped by Harwich and Waters. So when kids choose to go move from Harwich Elementary, or Harwich families elect to go to Chatham Elementary, they end up oftentimes leaving a free seat over at Harwich Elementary. So what we're seeing flow coming in terms of school choice children, largely coming in at Harwich Elementary, only because it's geographically closer to where those children's homes are. And we see, and historically have seen, some families from Harwich choose Chatham Elementary. It doesn't mean that children from Brewster or Dennis don't choose Chatham Elementary. They do. It's just that families oftentimes will say, yeah, they'll fill out in the school choice form and say, our first choice would be Harwich Elementary. And what we'll do is we'll use the school choice enrollment to try to balance out class sizes. So we'll try to make sure that we get our class sizes up to, but not exceeding 18 at each grade level. And then once we hit that 18, students per class will close down that grade level for school choice. But we want to make sure that this revenue that's coming in, that we're making sure that each town is getting their share of that revenue. What we do is, the way it's set out in the proposed change is to have a mechanism where there is school choice revenue allocated based on each building's share of the enrollment in the district, not share in how many school choice students are going to that building, because we have more school choice kids coming into Harwich than we do to Chatham, purely by geography. The other aspect of changing the regional agreement changes the operating, how the operating assessment is calculated. And at the moment, there's sort of the way that we have been handling the operating assessment. And there's a change that happens within this. I believe Michael has hyperlinks, and he can go and walk you through sort of a comparison of what happens currently versus what happens in the operational assessment under the change.
Okay, thank you. So it's worth just highlighting that these are just based on FY22 numbers, and there'll be lots of changes as we update the percentages of enrollment and so on for FY23 and going forward. But so at the moment, I'll just give a very high level overview of how the assessments work. So right now, in the current approach, you start with the overall budget. You then take out revenue, which is is going to also help to fund the district, and then the budget is split. The budget net of revenue is split into the operating assessment, transportation, capital, stabilization, and debt. The operating assessment, and that's really what we're talking about here, because operating and capital, but transportation and debt are not going to be changed under this approach at the moment. But the operating assessment, first of all, the minimum local contribution is assigned to each town. That's set by DESE, and then a percentage, each town's percentage of foundation enrollment, the average for the previous 3 years, is used to split up the remaining part of the operating assessment. So really that's it for the operating assessment. You take revenue off the top, then the minimum local contribution, and then you split up what's left based on the 3-year average of foundation enrollment. So that's what happens right now. And so that includes all the elementary, middle school and high school costs and district level costs. So the difference that a new approach has, and I'm not going to go through all this because there's a lot of detail in here, but essentially, a very high level, what it does is each town pays for its elementary school. But before that can happen, there's two things that have to happen first. One is the revenue has to be netted off. And so there's a process outlined in here at the end, how the revenue is netted off. Each portion of revenue is netted off Chatham Elementary School, and then Harwich Elementary School, and in the middle, and a high school and district costs. So that has to happen first. Then, as each town is going to be assigned its minimum local contribution, and that's the requirement of the state, that also has to be apportioned to the elementary schools and the the rest of the budget. And so that's what you see happening here. So this is that minimum local contribution being assigned to either the elementary schools or the middle and high school based on foundation enrollment in the grades. So once a foundation enrollment has been set aside, once revenue has been set aside and the minimum local contribution, then what's left is the elementary school budgets, and they are assigned to each town. And then what's left is split up based on the pupil enrollment, very similar to what's done now. And so this is just the operating assessment. So this number here is from the original methodology for the operating assessment. And on these figures, this was a $600,000 difference. And then, you know, then we would revert back to the existing methodology for transportation, debt, and capital. All right, that's back to you, Superintendent.
All right, and then like jump to the next slide. So the next slide looks at capital costs. Currently, under the regional agreement, the capital costs are split based on the 3-year rolling average of foundation enrollment. And it doesn't matter which school the capital is happening at, it splits it based on simply the rolling average of foundation enrollment. So under the recommended revisions, the capital costs for the middle school and high school, which are fully regionalized, 5 through the 5 through 7 middle school and the fully regionalized 9 through 12 or 8 through 12 high school, would be based on the rolling average for those capital costs. But the capital cost for the elementary school would be borne by the town that owns it. So we have talked with your board the last time Michael and I were before you. We're reminding people that there are roofing projects coming up. So we have a Chatham Elementary School roof that has a ballpark estimate to replace it at about $1.5 million. Under the proposal, the town of Chatham would pay for the cost of that roof by itself. And then there is a roof that's going to need to be replaced imminently at the middle school. That roof would be shared between the two towns based on a 3-year rolling average of foundation enrollment, because it's at the fully regional middle school. And I also want to acknowledge that Corey was right at the last meeting. There are siding and trim issues that we want to make sure that we get taken care of when we're doing the roof. But we also know that the roof piece of it, we can go and go through the process and hopefully have MSBA support a large chunk of that. Siding and trim aren't one of those things that MSBA covers. And Michael, if you flip to the next one. So, so an example here is that under the, for the Chatham Elementary roof, under the existing regional agreement, Chatham would pay roughly a quarter of it, Harwich 3/4. Under the recommended revisions, Chatham ends up paying the full cost, but Harwich also has to understand that at some point in the future, the roof on their elementary school will need to get replaced, and that Harwich would be fully responsible for that. In terms of the middle school, under the regional agreement, as it currently stands, Chatham's paying, based on the foundation enrollment averages, Chatham's paying roughly a quarter, Harwich roughly 3/4. The recommended revisions does not change that at all at the middle school, nor would it be in the at the high school years and years from now when there's any sort of roof repair that needs to happen there. And I think that might be just the last slide
Yeah, that's the last slide.
so we can stop there, and glad to answer questions, and happy to talk about what we heard from the Harwich board and where they are in their thinking about this.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you, Mike. That was a good presentation. I'm gonna, before I turn it over to Jeff, since he's our representative liaison, why don't you just give us a thumbnail sketch of what happened at Harwich? I mean, I read some of the stuff in the paper, but might as well put that on the table first, I guess.
Sure. Michael and I presented there a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, and I think at the time there was solid consensus at the table for the pieces of the regional agreement that are fiscal in nature. And they, I guess the town administrator had said that he would like to have the pieces that are not fiscal have some more time to vet those with the with town council, and to have the board mull the non-fiscal pieces at a later date and time. There was actually some conversation at the table about there are so many things needing to be adjusted within the regional agreement that would we want to consider, or should the towns consider addressing the fiscal piece, sort of narrowing how much red line people are having to wrestle with at a time, and how much explanations needed at any one town meeting, and do it as a two-step process where we address fiscal things at one town meeting, and then the next year we would go back and address the obsolete language cleanup at a next town meeting, so that there was I think less for people to deal with and focus on in any one given town meeting. They had proposed to have on their end a community forum for us to come discuss literally line by line the changes. So they had scheduled a date for January 4th for a community forum in Harwich for the school department to come and talk with whoever attends that forum. And at that time, we will go through line by line in the regional agreement and all the everything that's changing and why, and explain that again to educate people, because it's a lot to digest, and you want people to digest it before town meeting, and not to spend forever at a town meeting having people suddenly getting a crash course on what the change is. The board, I think the week after Michael and I met with them, unanimously voted, as I understand it, to support the fiscal pieces of the regional agreement. And I think that's where we stand for now. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And community forums are something we're really familiar with. Let me go over to Jeff, but let me just put something in the queue. We had a couple of emails, and I'm just going to mention one part of one, and you don't have to answer it now. We can talk to it later. It has to do with pre-K education, especially because you remember we had a major push for that, and, with our parents and also and with the citizens of Chatham. But let me turn it over now to Jeff. And Jeff, comments, questions, or?
Yeah. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Mike and Scott. The numbers part of this, Michael, especially, it can be very difficult to understand and kind of obtuse. And you did a really nice job laying out the rationale for the percentages and how they're allocated for both the minimum contribution and then the balance of the revenues and the balance of the operating expenses as well as operating costs. So I thought you did a nice job there. I did tick and tie every number, and certainly can explain it to anybody if they want, and I understand it. And net, it's a $611,000 reclass between the town of Harwich and the town of Chatham should we both take on the cost of our elementary schools. So be honest with you, of the three items that you're presenting here this evening, I'm very comfortable with at least the rationale and the approach and the raison d'etre for the need for correcting some inequities in the formula. That's a comment. But I have some concern about the school choice revenue section of this that you presented this evening, and the capital costs. And I hope I won't be too prickly on the capital costs, but the school choice revenue, aren't the administrators and/or the principals and leaders of our school system, are you not kind of in control of where that school choice revenue goes? You mentioned that it's purely by geography. Well, if the administration, meaning Scott and others, if you know that we're struggling in Chatham with enrollment and we want to have a viable school, elementary school, and we're struggling with enrollment, why would you not go out of your way to steer kids to a wonderful, smaller elementary school in Chatham?
Just to clarify, Jeff, we do, so we have, parents can choose, and where they choose to send their children. And so if we have, we at times will have more openings in Chatham at a grade level than we have in Harwich, and when that happens, we push choice towards Chatham. There are occasions where the number of students at a grade level is right at about 18 at Chatham Elementary, and there are open seats at Harwich, and we'll have the families fill the seats in that. So it's not that we don't steer them towards Chatham Elementary. It's just that when they fill out the form to begin with, what they list as their first choice, they frequently aren't getting. We can't go and give everybody that wants Harwich Elementary, and do try to shift the enrollment, because we want to make sure that the class sizes that are operating at 4th grade, 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, kindergarten in both buildings are comparable. That we want to keep them even, and school choice is a way that we can go and keep that parity in class sizes between the buildings.
Yeah, well, at 9% of where it runs now, the elementary school in Chatham, we get 9% of the school choice revenues, and that's really low, and it's low because of our enrollment, and it's going to be lower if our enrollment, if we don't get some school choice kids in the seats, and if there isn't a push, if you will, or a sales job or a marketing job for how attractive the Chatham school is by the region. And I would hope that we could strike some balance there, over and above the geography, the geographical advantage that the Harvard schools may or may not have. I think the small class sizes and the small school, the intimate atmosphere at the elementary school in Chatham, I think is should be, I think, a bigger sell than just geography. So that's my comment on school choice revenue. I'm nudgy about that. I want somehow to get some more assurances that the administration is going to go out of their way to steer kids or convince kids or market kids that Chatham's a great place to be. If we're going to go on our own, need more kids. The other issue I have is on the capital costs, and I get that the elementary schools capital costs would then be the responsibility of the town of Chatham. I get it, but why have we waited so long to address the roofs and until this new agreement? We desperately need a roof at the middle school and some other stuff at the middle school, and that would stay inside the region. But if the elementary school needs a new roof, why haven't we done it?
We've had in our capital plan that roof out into the future, and the future that what was the future then is now, and so it's not that we have been pushing off until we changed the regional agreement. It's just that that we had we have a long range capital plan, and have had been when back in the day when Steve Litwinowicz was our facilities director, we were talking about that roof is going to need to get replaced out there, and another, I can't remember if it was like 7-8 years. Well, here we are 7 or 8 years after, and Steve moved on, and that roof, the roof, I would say more so at the middle school, Chatham Elementary, is getting, that may be another 2 years that we can get out of that roof, but we're we're getting close. The middle schools, more even a more urgent roofing project.
So I just, you can think I'm, a little prickly here on this one, but the town of Chatham has a capital budget as well. And it's easy for folks to say, well, let's wait till the elementary school becomes the responsibility of the town of Chatham before we even start to replace the roof. I mean, anyway, it bothers me that suddenly, oh, by the way, and maybe it's not suddenly, but hey, the elementary school needs a roof, and by the way, you're going to be paying for it. And we already have an overloaded capital budget that we go crazy on every year trying to figure out what to pay for and what not. And darn it, you got to have a roof over the kid's head. Two other issues, and if I might, and bear with me. On the pre-K program, I would assume that were we were to have a pre-K program at the elementary school, it'd be under the aegis of this agreement would be fully the responsibility of Chatham.
So, I think we have to go look at what is the pre-K program that families want and need. And I think that's one of the things that we did a survey a couple of years ago, just looking at is, do families need a preschool program like the district currently runs that's accessible to that's accessible or available to everybody. And, so just to kind of educate people on sort of the range of different preschools, what school districts across the state and nation are required to offer is a preschool that is in our case, it's an integrated preschool that comes out of the Americans for Disabilities Act. So school districts are required to go and provide early intervention services for 3 and 4 year olds with special needs, and pair with them children, peer modeled children. So the preschool program we have is a half-day preschool that has a very special education focus for those children that are getting that early intervention. The challenge with a preschool like that is for a working family that might need coverage from 7 to 5 and needs it full day. That preschool oftentimes isn't available or accessible. It's available, but not accessible to working families. And I think, so there are different ways of going about it within the current regional agreement, or the regional agreement that currently is in place. If we offer a preschool through the school district, we have to do the same thing in both towns. So if we have, there is a workaround where the town of Chatham could theoretically either partner with an agency like the YMCA that runs preschools that are full day and also on a full year model, could run a preschool within the available classrooms at Chatham Elementary, similar to what they do regionally in a regional hub at Harwich Elementary in 2 of the classrooms this year. That they could do that same thing in Chatham. And if the town is contracting with the Y to do something like that, the town could actually do it at a lesser cost than if the school district were operating it, only because of just pay scales and contractual language that happens on the school side. Alternatively, the town of Chatham could elect to go and take a model that Orleans just used in October at their recent town meeting, which is a voucher program. And Orleans just passed $495,000 to offer families, or give every family with a 4-year-old $10,000 towards preschool costs, and the family can choose. Do you want a half day, a full day? Is it a home-based preschool? And $5,000 for 3-year-olds. Well, Chatham's a smaller town. It wouldn't take $495,000 to offer that same that same sort of voucher approach to universal preschool. So there are different methods of getting at it. So as I said, it would involve, it would involve different approaches, depending on if you go a voucher approach and let families choose, where you could use that $10,000 towards the Rocking Unicorn, or you could use that $10,000 towards, the Pilgrim Church's preschool, or, some family home preschool.
Okay, well, it sounds like there's some promise there. At least there are other creative mechanisms to perhaps get a viable program. I don't mean to steal anybody's thunder, but I do have one final, I guess, thought or comment, and it's been bandied about in Chatham. Has been the topic of some discussion about, well, if we're going to have our own elementary school, why wouldn't we have our own governance, our own school committee, and not belong to the region at all? So I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on why it's still advantageous for the town's elementary school to stay within the regional district.
I think speaking from a curricular standpoint, and and just making sure that you have common things happening in both elementary schools. I think the model that you're referring to is more like the Nauset model. And I think in many ways, some of the challenges with Nauset as a district is that they're trying to orchestrate 4 different dances happening at the elementary level and trying to sync them up, coming into their middle school. And the way that they have actually done that is forming a superintendent union, so that the superintendent is at least over all 4 of those towns' elementary schools as they come into the middle school. So there's so they've addressed it. They've created autonomy within each town, but there's a superintendent. The same superintendent has been over that to sync it up. I don't think it's necessarily an efficient system in terms of you still have you want to ideally see the same thing happening in terms of great curriculum, and a great program, and that see the same great math program happening in all 4 of those towns. But when you start to split it, you run the potential that that one town starts to do one thing that might not have the same outcomes as the other, and then it just becomes I think more challenging in terms of vertical articulation of what you want to accomplish.
Okay, well, thank you, Scott and Mike, and Peter, thank you so much for allowing me the time, and I defer to the rest of my mates here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Before we go on, I have in order Corey, Dean, and then Shireen, but Michael had his hand up. I don't know, Michael, if you wanted to say something
Yeah.
in between what Scott and Jeff were doing. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Peter. I was just to respond to a couple of things you said, Jeff. The first was just about how the school choice revenue is allocated. So the wording that we're proposing is actually not based on school choice numbers. It's based on total enrollment. So where the school choice students land won't impact how the school choice revenue is applied to the budget.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. But if our enrollment, goes down over time, then we're going to receive less of the money.
Overall enrollment's gone down. It'll make
yes. And having school choice students who land in our schools would help that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other point was just about the roofs. So I just wanted to just throw something in there that we have. So although we've not been trying to replace the roofs, we have been spending money on repairing the roofs. So they haven't been allowed to languish. And I know that it came up that there had been some leaks in the roof at a previous storm, but they've been repaired. And so in the most recent storm, there weren't any leaks at the middle school. So, I mean, I appreciate that the timing's not great for this being proposed, just as we're also proposing you take on the capital costs. But they haven't been allowed to languish. And there has been a lot of time and money and effort spent on maintaining the roofs and, it's not allowing leaks to permeate the building.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Michael. Corey.
Thank you, Peter. Scott, thank you very much for the presentation. I mean, I'm clearly very supportive of our Chatham Elementary School, probably somewhat protective of it. Ultimately, whatever direction we take on all this, we want to do what's best in the interest of the children and the students. So I think we can all agree on that. Jeff covered a whole lot of ground. There are a couple things I just want some questions and comments on. First question is on the capital project side. I don't believe Harwich Elementary School has had any major capital projects recently. Would that be correct?
They have not had any major projects since we've come together as a district.
All right, no. So yeah. So it's not like they just had a major capital project and now we're going to change the agreement. Nothing's happened. We know what's going on with the Chatham Elementary roof, and at some point, the lifespan of the Harwich Elementary roof will have to be addressed in that same manner. A question I have is and let me back up a second. I do appreciate the clarification on the various aspects of the middle school work that needs to be done, the roof versus the siding. So that would actually, the trigger of the question I had is, would either of the elementary schools, Chatham or Harwich, be eligible for MSBA, offset cost, either currently, or would that change at all if we win with these revisions? Does that change at all?
It wouldn't change that at all. MSBA will, there are things that they'll pay for and things they won't. They will pay for roofs and they will also pay for boilers. And one of the things that that Michael and I have discussed with the school committee is that it might make sense. The boilers have a lifespan, and when we're replacing those roofs, we might want to look at, is that lifespan of the boiler also getting close? Because what you don't want to have happen is have the boiler give up the ghost mid-year,
Right.
and then you're having to pay for it right then. It's not been, you've not gotten in MSBA's queue on that boiler, as opposed to the middle school building, as we all know, could use a refresh when it comes to siding, when it comes to trim, when it comes to the roof. That it might make sense to also proactively look at the boiler. It hasn't died yet, but it's also reaching the end of that lifespan, and that's so roofs and boilers are things that are eligible for MSBA support.
Okay, no, that's I also want to make clear, because either scenario, or with or without these revisions, we're not going to change that element of our potential reimbursement scenario. So that's I appreciate that. No, it's Jeff's covered the school choice issues, concerns. There's going to obviously be some more comments about the dynamics of keeping things pretty much the same as far as the school committees and stuff, or changing that dynamic a little bit. I'm looking forward to public comments on that as this conversation moves forward. But I think bottom line is I think this town can and will support the elementary school, and we will do everything in our power to maintain it, support the kids, support their education, and do it in an equitable manner with Harwich. So I don't have any other questions at the moment, and I do appreciate the update on these revisions. So thank you.
Hey, thanks, Corey. Let's see, make sure I get this right. I have Dean up there.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Scott and Michael, for the presentation. I have a handful of questions. My first is on the slide that says that deals with the allocation of school choice. Just had a question for clarification. There's a ratio, average ratio of enrollment. It says this ratio is the ratio of the school's enrollment of the total district enrollment. Does that mean the total district elementary enrollment, or the entire enrollment for the whole district? What's the denominator in that ratio?
It's the entire district.
Entire district.
Because some gets allocated to the middle and high school as well, and so that would so that will also impact your assessment, but just in a different way.
Okay. The second, just to follow up on the points that Jeff was making regarding school choice. And I think Jeff said he would like to was looking for some assurance that the school administration would try to point choice students toward Chatham in order to keep the enrollments up there as we try to transition here in Chatham to support younger families in town with our housing initiatives. Is there any room in the agreement for some language to support that kind of assurance, or is that beyond the pale? I don't know, Jeff, if that was considered at all in the discussions, but I throw that out for comment by anybody.
Scott or Michael?
So, so there's, I'm just trying to imagine what the wording would look like. It's, and I want to emphasize that we don't, where we do, or what we do is aim families towards the free seats that we have in our two schools. So we, if we have less than 18, we'll aim families towards those, towards those free seats, and use the choice movement to balance out class sizes between the two schools. I think, so if we're at a point where Chatham Elementary is at one section per so let's say there's only one kindergarten section. I'm just trying to think of what the wording would look like to say, I think it would take I'm just trying to think, how do you go and say, that the next 18 children are coming over, and again, I don't know from a Chatham taxpayer standpoint, do you want the school superintendent to push 18 more children over into the building? And I want, first of all, I want to emphasize, as long as I've been here, we've never gotten 18 children that have applied for school choice at any grade level. So this is, we're talking about a hypothetical that doesn't really happen, because that 18 children then is going to cause the elementary school's budget to go up substantially. And if Chatham, if the town of Chatham is paying for that, so there's, if we push them to get them up to that maximum class size that we have been keeping as our guideline under budgets, I'm just sort of at a loss on how you word it, and how do you make the, and at some point you're having a choice to to take on extra costs by pushing the next group of 18.
Okay, I didn't have any particular wording in mind. I was just speaking conceptually. Jeff put his hand up again. Jeff, did you want to comment on this before I go to my other questions?
Yeah, thank you, Peter, Dean, and Scott. Yeah, on the it's not a question of, Scott, if I might, of filling another 18 seats. It's giving priority to Chatham's elementary school if in fact we have 14 or 13 or 12 in a class when we're trying to get to 18. So I think, administrative priority would be considered when we need to round out a class in Chatham that may be light. You do your darndest to get a student of choice into Chatham.
Yeah,
knowing that we're already starting with scant population, with not enough kids, with too few kids. So, I could craft language, whether it's administratable or not, or executable or not, we'll see. But, I would think every effort should be given to putting the next child in Chatham if there's capacity. Now, obviously parents have choice. If they don't want to go to Chatham, they don't want to go to Chatham. But if you market it so that Chatham is made as attractive as it already is, and it could be better with a few more kids, then I think we at least have a shot. And I'd like to see some kind of language around, giving priority to choice kids or to the next kid in Chatham, for Chatham, if you will.
And Jeff,
And I can play with it. I'm not talking about another 18 kids. I don't think, to your point, I don't think we've ever had 18 school choice, in any grade, looking for one grade or whatever.
Yeah, and
So I'm looking at the margin. I'm looking at,
I want to emphasize what you're asking for happens. So if there's 13 kids in a classroom at Chatham Elementary and at third grade, and the fourth grade classes are at 15, we will only push the kids towards Chatham because there are fewer kids there. And what we want to do is make sure that we're equalizing class sizes best we can. So the only time that we would push families the other direction is, let's say we had 18 children in each classroom at Chatham Elementary School, but the cohort that was sitting in Harwich was at 16. We would go and have families fill those 16 and bring them closer to 18, because if we pushed them over to Chatham, we'd be pushing those numbers up above a threshold that that we've been keeping class size below at the elementary level.
Okay. Let me just thank you. I want to take back my time here. So sort of as a companion question, and I know we've talked about this in the past, the interest of some Harwich families in having their children attend Chatham Elementary. And I know that, Scott, you fairly well documented, I think, at the last time we talked about this at one of our sessions, that the number is relatively small. We talked about East Harwich in particular. But I guess I wanted to throw out, that's an additional way of filling seats in Chatham Elementary School. And I understand you want to equalize the classroom sizes between the two schools, but again, is whether it's a freestanding policy or I guess it's a practice that you say you do, but I just wondered if there is some way of assuring that the wishes of Harwich parents who wish to have their children attend Chatham Elementary be honored as much as you can.
Yeah, in the last school year, the school committee actually explicitly passed an intra-district school choice policy that has priority given to Harwich families going to Chatham Elementary School over and above any other family. So if there's a Brewster family that wants Chatham Elementary and there's one seat, but there's also a Harwich family, the Harwich family can get that seat, so that there's so that there is sort of a priority that way.
Thank you. I wasn't aware of that. I appreciate that. That sounds good. With respect to the actual red line language, I guess I'm going to direct this question to Shauna. I think I saw an email some time ago with proposed language. Is that correct? Because there was nothing in our packet. I have not really reviewed any language here. Am I mistaken, Mr. Peter or Shauna?
Yeah, well, I know that I've seen the red line, but that was a while ago. But it was not in this package. We're just getting an update.
Yeah, we should get that.
Right.
Just a couple more questions to school administration. So you talked about, in response to Jeff's questions about preschool, the options for Chatham to have programs at Chatham Elementary utilizing the Y or through a voucher program. Those would be funded out of the Chatham non-school budget, right?
Correct.
Whereas the program that you have now at the Y program at Harwich, is that funded out of the district budget?
No, that is funded by families through the Y.
Okay, so it's not part of, okay. We had an email, I think Peter was going to refer to it at some point today, with a suggestion that there be some sort of a local school committee to, if we go ahead with this and have Chatham and Harwich assume respectively the cost of their elementary schools. And I understand what, your response to Jeff's question about having the sort of Nauset model, which is in place in other communities, as we know. If the select board in Chatham should wish to create an advisory committee to the select board on matters related to Chatham Elementary School, has nothing to do with the school district. I think that's something we could do. I'm not proposing it, but would there be any I know you're not lawyers, but would there be any policy concerns if we were to do that? I mean, my thinking is that some people want us to take on the airport, which is and we have expressed our views on that. But if we're going to be taking on the financing of full financing of the Chatham Elementary School, it might be possible and advisable for the select board to consider establishing such an advisory committee to itself. I just wondered if you had any comment on that model.
I'm just checking, Dean, is that a question to Michael and I?
It's a question to you and Michael. I mean, I don't see any legal problem with it. I'm not proposing it.
So
I'm just trying to address a suggestion that was made to us today, which is somewhat different. But
yeah, I can only provide some feedback, at least that we've gotten when in conversations with DESE and about what their concerns are or might be with the model that we're proposing. Is I think their only concern is that that under the regional agreement, the regional school committee is that decision-making entity that that's guiding education in the two towns and in the region. And I think the feedback that we've gotten from DESE is that they would want to make sure that whatever iteration of a regional agreement is passed at either town meeting, that is preserved. And I think that because I think there is a worry from that at least DESE has expressed, and this probably comes from years of them dealing with the numerous different regions out there, some of which may have a structure like this, that that there might be pressure to say, okay, since we're funding our own elementary school, we want to see that the math program at that elementary school is like this math program and not the math program that the regional school district is currently using. And I think that's where DESE would push back and say, no, that has to be the decisions that are made by the school committee, not by a finance committee or a select board.
That's very good observation. It's sort of, I'm minded to think of, and back to the context of the airport, the FAA wanting to make sure that we're running our airport correctly and according to proper strictures and obligations. I just wanted to thank you for answering these questions. I just wanted to pass on a collateral observation that if the town of Chatham were to take this on, well, let me ask one further question. The 600,000, that's a movable number in years, in subsequent years. It could go up or down, right? Depending on the finances on both sides.
Right. Yeah. And so as that minimum required contribution shifts in any given year or enrollment shifts, it will go up or down. I think what I was sort of putting in the document that I initially wrote that got this conversation started well over a year ago. If we look out into the future, and if Chatham's school age population continues to contract, just the economy of scales issue, as Chatham Elementary School gets smaller and smaller, that number would get larger is
Yeah.
what you could project and anticipate. And I want to make sure, like, I want to make sure that we keep a really strong school system, period. Then hopefully that's going to keep families here with us, both in Harwich and in Chatham, and not see, not see us, head into, really, an era of really small schools.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to offer this observation for the benefit of the board and anybody that's listening. The $600,000, and let me say parenthetically, I thoroughly and enthusiastically support keeping our Chatham Elementary School going forward. And I think these proposals are not unreasonable at all in terms of trying to reach an accommodation as between the two towns. And we'll likely take these to town meeting. I'm anxious to see the language. I sort of like the idea of separating off the non-financial stuff for another town meeting, because things can get very confusing. But if the town of Chatham is to come up with $600,000, we might, as a board, want to consider partially funding that by earmarking a portion of an increase in the hotel motel tax. We can bring ours up from 4% to 6%. Chatham is about to do, Harwich is about to do that. We've talked about using it for affordable housing. I sort of have in my head mentally, take 1 point for affordable and attainable housing, take half a point for the Chatham Elementary School, and take a half a point, put that into the general fund. We could, on the numbers that I've seen so far, we could get about $300,000 or $400,000 to help fund this. So anyway, those are my thoughts, and I realize that's a collateral comment, but I thought it was worth mentioning in the context of what we're discussing tonight. Thank you both, and Michael and Scott. Thank you, Peter. I'm done.
Thanks very much, Dean, and Shireen, you've been patient. It's up to you. You're on mute. I get to say that to you this time. Right?
All for good reason, though, Peter. Everybody brought up some really good points, and don't want to reiterate it, but I do want to thank Scott and Michael for laying out the numbers rationale, and Jeff for bringing up the issues around the school choice and capital costs that, seem to be looming. I think one of the things that I'm just looking at is, we've heard from a lot of the community about the needs and the visions for what we see for our community, and especially for the elementary school, and the idea that we do not want to see it go away. And it's not going to go away, obviously. But I would like to have our board and maybe hear a little more from the community about the governance issue, and maybe hear more about the NOSIP model and how that worked for that. Seems like it does have some challenges, but I think Chatham is unique. We've heard so much from our community about what they really want to see as a vision. Do understand the idea that we need to have consistency, with curriculum and all that. But I honestly think that there are certain things that we probably would want to look at from the eyes of Chatham, from the perspective of Chatham, and as we are. We face some big challenges here, and the school is an important component to attracting people to live here and to make sure that it is the best that it can be for our kids. But that's all I have to say for now. And I did agree with Dean about separating the recommendation to separate the two issues to separate town meetings makes a lot of sense to me as well. So thank you. Thank you for your time tonight, and thanks, Peter.
Thanks very much, Shireen. Just let me just sum up in general, or give you at least partly my observations. First of all, again, thank you very much. This is a great presentation, and I think you encapsulated what you brought up previously and then added to it. I think if you get a sense from this board, even by what we voted on previously, I think we're fully supportive of the way you want to change this, and Chatham's role as as in increasing how much we would pay, given the assessments and given the fairness that's involved. I don't see that as an impediment. And I would say too, I mean, I was sort of leaning at the beginning that maybe it makes sense to separate these two, because there are a number of issues we could talk about as far as outside of the funding. That's one. One is the assessment, and I'm supportive of that. I understand the capital costs that are involved. I'm glad that Corey brought up the point of MSBA. That would, what I understand is that would help support the $1.5 million or help offset it to some extent. And the comment about boilers, I agree. You know, I've been involved with that before, and you don't want to fool around with that. If it's close to a year, I'd fix it. But that's me. The considerations, I think, given where we were a year ago, universal pre-K and support of that, Chatham's going to should do. I think we agreed to that like a year and a half ago, or tried to get it done. And one way or another, we should be able to do that. And that's one thing I think that we need to address as a town. And I appreciate the fact that there are ways to do it outside of the regional agreement and still make it work for us and for our families, because it's just it's unimaginable to me, a person with one or two children having to pay so much what the cost of childcare is now. And even if one person decides to stay home, there's still a huge amount of money that's involved, and the loss of income. So I think it's extremely important that we take a serious look at that. And let me see if there's one other. Oh, the idea of I agree with in general, the idea of a Chatham Elementary school committee, that has to be looked at. We have to see the positives and the negatives. And we've gotten some good feedback from at least a few people, but we have to talk to the town about that. You have to have people to fill that. And then how do we coordinate with the region? I think that's extremely important, but I think we're going to have to address it. Let me ask one question for Scott and you and Mike. Michael, I think you know kind of generally where we're going. What's our next steps? Where do you see us moving next, as far as coming back with a piece of paper and then and the school budget? Because we're right in the middle of the budget process.
So I think a suggestion that came up at our school committee meeting is that I do think that there probably needs to be a reconvening of whatever sort of working group. I think there's probably urgency to having both boards talk and make sure, like, if the want is to address it as a two-step process and address fiscal stuff now and the rest at a subsequent town meeting, that would allow us to sort of focus and start producing the documents that we need to go and get vetted by DESE to just hone it in and say, here's what we're going to be doing year one. These other changes are going to be happening down the road. But I think the sooner the decision can be made as to, are we just doing fiscal or are we doing the whole enchilada? I think probably a decision that I would hope we can have made by the beginning of the new year or at the latest.
Okay.
And I do think that there seemed to be like a consensus that we were hearing with the other board. It seems like it's here too, that maybe having it be a two-step process is the way to go. Although I'm sure that there are some on my school committee who have been wanting to see us change the regional agreement and remove the obsolete language for about the last 5 years, that are probably going to pull out their hair and say, no, don't say that we have to talk about this for another couple of years. But I get it, because it's just so dense. There's so much information there.
But yeah, okay. My only comment is, I know there were a lot of red lines. I don't remember where they all were when you send it in, but having the fiscal part of it as the main part, and then just have housekeeping changes. I don't know. We ought to just think about that. Not that it would get in the way. I just don't know. I guess it depends on how much it is. I see that Dean's hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Peter. This isn't a question. I hasten to add something in follow up to my comment about the hotel and motel tax. I think I expressed it conditionally that if the town of Chatham were to adopt a hotel tax, I wasn't proposing it. I think we should consider it. It's a big if, and there are a lot of parties who have interest in that issue, as we've known from in previous years, including the Merchants Association and the lodging establishments. So I just really wanted to get that clarified on the table. Thank you.
Yep, sure. Before Michael, go ahead, and then I'll go to Jeff.
I was just going to add, in terms of next steps, another big next step is us developing our budget and, getting those percentages from the state and getting an idea of exactly what the difference would be. Because, as we talked about, the $600,000 was based on last year. So we really need to pin down what it's going to look like for FY23.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
Just a couple follow-up comments based on the conversation. I kind of like the idea of the advisory board. There is an elementary school council now that I think reports to the principal primarily, but it's made primarily of parents. But that's been in place, I think, for many years. I assume it's still in place. So there's a good sounding board for feedback on elementary school operations kind of already in place. And we've got a very active group of parents in Chatham as well. So it's less formal perhaps than appointing a new advisory board. I am all in favor of earmarking, if you will, or tagging some of those rooms. If we do have an increase in the rooms tax to the school, I mentioned at our last selectmen's meeting, I think we also have thought about affordable and attainable housing for those dollars. And then it's great to hear that the roof might be offset by MSBA funds. I'd love to hear more about that. And I just want, obviously want to be on record that I'm fully supportive of an elementary school continuing in Chatham. And if we have to bear the cost, so be it. I'm just interested in making sure that, we do the best deal we possibly can for our town and our kids and our children, as I've tried to do for years here in town, as you will know. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And I want my final comment. It has to deal with we have seen a declining enrollment, but so has Harwich, and we both have a similar problem. Maybe ours is a little bit more extreme than theirs. Is to be able to have an affordable place for people who are working, who are in good jobs, a place not only that they can afford, but also to have it there. Because if you want to find a favorable rental that's market rate, you can't find one in Chatham. So we start from there. So given all that was said, are you okay, Scott? We'll move ahead and we'll also discuss things in the future. Well, let me ask anybody in the public want to speak? I left it open if anybody wanted to. David, I see your hands up. David Oppenheim, Mr. Oppenheim.
Hi. First of all, I've been watching this and following this as much in the newspapers and stuff. I think the presentation was excellent, and I agree. Certainly, there's huge support to keep the elementary school in Chatham, and I thought the numbers were very equitably done. Some of the other things about capital stuff I didn't really know. One of the things that a lot of the comments have tied to is affordable housing, whether it's a new, we add to the hotel tax or things. Some of it should be affordable housing, some of it any sources of revenue, because there's been a lot of push, and I think every single person here is for the Board of Selectmen has talked about affordable or attainable housing, et cetera. So I think, and whether you separate this into a monetary thing, two separate projects or something else, one of the things that I think when you're reopening an agreement such as this, I would make a suggestion that there's other things that should be also considered. And the one is that the Stony Hill Stepping Stones property that was looked at and rejected, and I accept that for the senior center, which is the piece of property, the 2 acres between the bike path and Stepping Stones Road, should be considered as one of the things that should be considered here. Is that be considered set aside as surplus property, taken out of the Monomoy agreement and given back to the town of Chatham for the purpose, multiple purposes, but my purpose would be for it to be used for affordable housing. Having been involved with the discussions about that is being considered for the senior center. One of the major objections, and Mr. Selectman Kukulis always said this, and Mr. Castro did also, it's a residential neighborhood, and we shouldn't be bringing something like the senior center into a residential neighborhood. Okay, let's accept that premise. You have 2 acres of land, shovel ready with sewer available. It's perfect for affordable or attainable housing. It could be done in a manner that would be consistent with the neighborhood as it is, because it's a neighborhood out of large 1 acre lots. It's a neighborhood of 10, 15,000 half-acre lots. And this would be a good time to do that. It's we're about to spend, so I assume it's going through the Buckley property to $1.3 million. It's about the same size. And that's a neighborhood center where you might look at alternative forms. This property would be perfect for single-family houses. You could put, depending on how much you wanted to stretch it, at least 8 and be consistent with zoning, and you could put as many as 12 or 14 there. And the nice part about it is that is affordable housing might actually have kids in it that would want to go to our school systems. I've actually met with several people from the Chatham 365, several people that were advocates for the elementary school, and most people will acknowledge that until the whole senior center thing came up, most people didn't even know that land was part of the school in itself. If that's removed, you still have one of the 10 largest middle school campuses in Massachusetts. It's never going to be functionally used for anything. We own it. We don't have to spend $1.3 million to get 8 to 10 houses. And as I said, it's shovel ready. It has no functional use and never will have any functional use in the middle school for fields or anything else. And what a great idea to maybe have affordable, whether it's rental or sale with restrictions on it for families, because we are looking for, we're saying one of the reasons Chatham school system is going down is because there's no place to live. It's a hard place to find, whether it's the Marconi program, whether it's rental, whether it's housing. These houses, these properties could be built. We could get it going very quickly. We wouldn't have to have long studies and discussions. As far as parking, where we're looking at a senior center with 80 spaces, you're looking, if you had 10 houses on there, you'd be looking at 20 parking spaces. The houses could be modest, and it's a modest neighborhood. It would be very much in compliance. And I think that should be put into the discussion at this time if you're going to be revising the Monomoy district. Having appeared before the school committee, advocating at the time for it to be considered for the senior center, certainly the Harwich people said, one of the reasons they were not supportive is the Board of Selectmen of Chatham was not supportive. So they didn't feel comfortable doing that. Things have changed. We're not talking about senior center anymore. Let's just say that ship has sailed on that piece of property. But what a great use to put residences in a residential neighborhood next to a school system. So I'd ask that you just consider that going forward.
Thanks very much, David. I don't know, Scott, if you have a comment,
Just a real quick one. There's two separate documents. There's a document that is the lease, which is actually a separate document from the regional agreement, to the best of my knowledge. So I think Mr. Oppenheim, I actually would argue that that any changes that we've been talking about don't touch the lease, but it's not saying that a separate conversation couldn't happen to address the lease, which is a completely separate document altogether.
Can I respond to that? Just respond to that?
Sure. Go ahead, David.
Yeah. No, and again, I don't know the mechanics, and I'm not arguing the mechanics. I'm arguing the concept. We're talking about making a financial decision to be fair and equitable with regards to the elementary school. And it's just a good time to have a conversation on what's best for the school systems completely. There is a huge push in Chatham for affordable housing. We're doing the best we can. We got turned down on some things. We are in front of but to have a piece of property in a prime residential neighborhood, a modest representative neighborhood where there are families, where there are kids, to be able to develop a piece of property like that will never be functionally used at the middle school, but could in fact provide housing to for people that will have families and children going to our schools, to not look at that, and make that part of the whole conversation, whether it's part of the lease or whether it's part of the other agreement. I don't know enough about it to comment. I do know that the conversation's there and it can be part of the conversation. And if everybody's in agreement, it can be accomplished. I don't want anybody to say that you can't accomplish it. I think if you're interested in it, you should at least try and see what the mechanism to do it, because we could have 8 to 10 or more houses there in a very relatively short period of time, whatever that means, and start to attack, because we've got a lot of ideas, but we really haven't gotten anywhere. And one of the things that people worry about is how much things cost the land to acquire for affordable housing. We all know what's happened over the last few years with real estate values. We actually own that piece of property. So that's my last comment, and I just hope you will consider it.
Okay, well, we will, and thank you very much for your comment. I'd only take issue with nothing's happening. I understand that I'd like to go faster, but things are happening. That's my only other comment, and I appreciate the fact that I agree. As far as putting housing there, it is a neighborhood, and affordable housing would be appropriate in a neighborhood like that. And we'll see how we can work that within, whether it's with this agreement or not. It's part of our discussion, especially on the housing trust. Any other comments from the board? Scott or Michael? All right, we know our next step forward. We'll be moving forward again on that, and we're looking forward to further discussions, especially with the Harwich board. So, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and it was a good presentation. Let's move on to our last agenda item, which is committee appointments. And we're looking at first appointments to the Railroad Museum. We have 2. There's really one opening and the other one with John Hausner. He's been on the board for a while and has been working there, and he's already filled a slot. Did I say that correctly, Shauna? You still there?
Yes, Mr. Hauser's been volunteering with the group, and this is to officially make him a part of the group.
Okay, so let's see. First is the Railroad Museum. Can I have a motion, please? Okay, Dean. Sorry, I see you.
These have been recommended by the working group. I move to appoint Rick Jenkins to the Railroad Museum Working Group until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Okay, we have a second discussion. Let's take a vote. Jeff.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Shireen.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Okay, we have another one.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint John Hausner to the Railroad Museum Working Group until June 30th, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Okay.
Second.
All right, discussion. None. Shireen.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. And we have one more finally for the Energy and Climate Action Committee. Sure.
Mr. Chair,
Okay, go ahead.
I move to appoint Sarah Griscom to the Energy and Climate Action Committee until June 30th, 2022, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Second, discussion, seeing none. Corey.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Dean.
Aye.
Sheree.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. I noticed that, David, you still have your hand up. Did you want to comment, or is it just up from before? Up, looks like it's frozen.
It's frozen.
Yeah, okay.
It's up from before. Yeah.
All right. That's it. A motion to adjourn.
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. I see a second. All right. Before we leave, let me wish everyone a good night tonight, but we'll start with Dean.
Aye.
Shereen.
Aye.
Corey.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. Good evening, Chatham, and thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone.